What's up, everybody? We should be going live now. Do I need my glasses this morning? I don't think I need my glasses unless we're going to spend an inordinate amount of time on things. But good morning, everybody. It is sort of a brisk, at least where I live. It was a mid-60s morning this morning. Cold enough that I wanted to get a sweater on, so Chris and I have been out hanging out, drinking coffee with the cats and everything else. I usually get up around 3 o'clock in the morning, so by somebody was talking the other day. They were like, 8 o'clock in the morning. You're doing this chat at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's too early. I was like, early? I'm up at 3. You know, 8 o'clock's noon. But welcome everybody. Good Sunday morning to everybody. We're going to be going through the OGL and the ORC and the differences between them, and just kind of diving in and having a greater discussion about the two, because there are some distinctions that I think a lot of people are kind of glossing over in terms of, the OGL is a license, but it's also heavily focused on a rule set, as opposed to the ORC, the ORC, which is also a license, but not focused on any one given rule set. So I think those distinctions are kind of important for the greater conversation being had about the two, notwithstanding the issues related to all the whiff waff and who lawful around um, the poor language and everything else. But we're gonna dive in this morning. Make sure that everything's up and going. We look like we're live. We're good. Feel free to drop questions or comments. I do have a couple of questions in my notebook from a couple of people, so we'll get to those today because I had some good questions on a couple of the comments. So obviously, I think the big thing for a lot of people was understanding that um, a week of silence from Wizards of the Coast didn't do anyone any favors. And in the meantime, in that vacuum of space, you had everyone scrambling in a panic. There was a brilliant open letter kind of interview style that came out the other day, which I'm going to be. Um, it's an interview with the president of Paizo, and he talks really about what was the form, why they formed this and everything else. And I'm gonna be doing that in a separate video because it's a really good interview, but it's kind of like an open letter as well to publishers and sort of saying, these are the realities of what we've always been working on, everything else in the tabletop genre as a whole. But coming back to, an open RPG creative license where people can sort of bring all their ideas together and foster this, evolution of whatever's the next stage of tabletop, just with all these, melting pot of ideas, was essentially what the OGL was always supposed to be, and it was for many, many years. And it's unfortunate that we had a single company who decided that they wanted to monetize that in a way that strangleheld everybody else. And ultimately, anytime there's competition at that scale, you're gonna see an expansion, because people are gonna start to say, "Well, I don't like the way that's being done. That's being done. That's being done. That's being done. Let's go off here and do something." And out of that comes innovation. And I think this is a very innovative step. We have other, and the important thing to realize here is that this is just a license. It's not a new rule set. Whereas what Cobalt Press is doing, as an example, is a rule set, which is a little different, as far as I understand things. Anyway, they may be developing. I've noticed some terminology in there about a license as well, but some interesting stuff to look at here as we get deeper into today's topic. So welcome everybody. What's up, Babyloni? How are you doing this morning, man? I'm on my third cup of coffee, shaken with beans and bacon. Speaking of beans, though, I think we're cooking beans today or tomorrow. Because it cooled down last night and it didn't rain last night. So as long as the firewood is dry, I think we're gonna go out and go to get the campfire started up today and cook some beans. That might be tomorrow, but I think it's today. All right. So The update to the OGL that Wizards of the Coast made, essentially they were supposed to release a video and a statement on the day that Paizo dropped their announcement. I really don't want to wear my glasses this morning. We'll ditch those for now. And they decided to pull the announcement and instead did this. Now, I'm torn because there's a lot of really good rumors out there, and pretty much all of the rumors have turned out to be true so far. Um, but I know in regards to how this was received and everything else, there's that employee email, the insider email that was sent out to a journalist outlet, and that's been now spread around from the D&D Beyond staff, saying, that I think it was by the 13th of January they hadn't heard, they suddenly there was a big get together in the office, and basically all the management is upset because they didn't see their OGL being received the way they thought it was going to be received, and then rather than realizing they made a mistake, they blame the community. And this is unfortunate, but I also think it shows, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, that the people who are currently in management of Wizards of the Coast are, I don't know if they're just incapable of receiving constructive criticism or if they're of the generation that just won't accept criticism whatsoever. Because everyone told them it was a bad idea to do these things. And yet, when they come out with the 2.0 language, they're still trying to push. Like, everyone on the internet told them, what do we want? We want the 1.0A OGL to remain, and that's the only one we want. If you don't screw with that, we're happy to subscribe to your services, buy your products, continue to support Dungeons and Dragons Wizards. Just don't mess with the 1.0A. Don't mess with it. If you don't mess with it, then there's no problem. And the 2.0 language that they launched the other day shows that they have no intention of just leaving it alone. They need it gone for them to be able to monetize things in the way they want, or at least their legal advice is telling them you got to have it gone, you got to have it gone, and that's whoever's at the top of that chain is forcing them to do this because of the legal things that they want to put into the new OGL. And in my mind, all you would have to do to the 1.0A is make an amendment to it that is a clause about the NFTs and stuff that you want to protect, which are kind of already protected anyway under intellectual property law and copyright law. Because if someone goes out there and makes, and this is the controversy that I believe, as I understand it, I'm not intimately familiar with. Was it Games Workshop, the company that does Warhammer? But as I've been investigating all these other systems that I never played before and games I never played before, some people have come out and said that the company behind Warhammer is just as bad as Wizards of the Coast because they did this thing. And I guess this thing that they did was they went after fan art, I guess, in the last couple of years. Again, I'm not intimately familiar with that. But and I'm not on their side at all, but I do want to say, as someone who is actively engaged in creating a tabletop world with its unique product identity, and I pay artists for their work, and that work is meant to represent our unique world and our unique product identity and the unique creatures and the unique lore, the unique designs in terms of visual designs for different factions and create unique monsters that we have in our world. I can tell you right now that I do not want anyone out there profiting from our product identity, our intellectual property. So if we can strip it down to that element, what I believe it's Games Workshop, what they did was they essentially came in, and I don't know the full. Wayne Lamb is in chat saying they stopped fan art and creators. Maybe someone can clue me in a little bit more on this. But from what I understand is they had a concern about those images being used for profit. And I think this is an area where a lot of people might not realize this, but if I go Google an image right now on the internet, it is really easy to find some amazing art. And I would argue, because if you remember, I'm coming also at this from, I was a photographer for many years and a videographer in the travel space, and it's notoriously difficult there where if something ever gets shared without a watermark or, without some sort of copyright associated with it, that image gets into Google, and then that image gets used in potentially thousands of different places without you as the original photographer ever getting credit for that image or ever getting paid for that image, for the licensing and everything else. It is a detrimental issue for photography in the digital space. And I can understand why a company would want to sort of protect all of their original intellectual property as far as it is visually represented to the world space, whether it's fan art and other stuff like that. I don't know the reasoning behind it, but I can say from a protect your copyright and protect your trademark and protect your product identity move, this is why I can kind of understand the language that Wizards of the Coast wants to put into the OGL regarding NFTs and everything else. But I also don't think it's necessary given that theoretically all of that stuff is already protected because it's, like no one can go out there and draw an image of a beholder and publish it as such without that being copyright infringement. So I don't, it seems a little strict to need to have that. But again, they want rules. I get it. But all that needs to do is be an amendment to the 101, the 10A language. You don't have to create a whole new OGL just to have that in there. But I digress. In any case, the biggest controversy for me, and I think for a lot of people, was the idea that they want to come in and somehow impose all these restrictions on things that aren't product identity. Like, if you'll notice throughout all of this, what is the SRD? Essentially, what are the components of the SRD that people are using when they use the OGL or have been for years, for the last 20 plus years? Most of everything that's being put into these other Critical Role, Pathfinder, Ouroboros, Grim Hollow, Dranken. What is it? There's another one by the Dungeon Dudes, and I can't remember what it's called right now. The Drunken Dungeon of something starts with a D. Anyway, the Dungeon Dudes did theirs. These are all original worlds and original IP. The only thing they're using from the SRD are like the basic D20 system and some spells which aren't product identity spells because everything in the SRD this is important. Everything in the SRD is not tied to product identity. So there's no like Bigsby's grasping hand in the SRD from D&D. Like there's no monsters in the SRD that are from any of the Dungeons and Dragons properties. So at the core of these other homebrew worlds and these homebrew settings, what are they really using from the OGL? And it was always just sort of this idea of a shared space of rules that are generally considered to be generic enough that we can all share them sort of based off the D20 system. But because no one can, copyright those game mechanics, it became this vague thing. And then flash forward where we are today, and suddenly Wizards of the Coast is saying they want to monetize every aspect of that. Drankenhelm, that's the one I was thinking of, Dark Winter. Thank you. Isn't it the Dungeon Dudes who did Drakenhelm? I could swear it was the Dungeon Dudes. I might be mistaken on who did that. In any case, all of those worlds have their own unique races, their own unique classes, their own unique backgrounds, lore, pantheon of deities, whether it's a grimdark campaign or, cyberpunk campaign, all of those things are product identity, which are unique to those companies. And what are they really using with the OGL? Not a lot. Like maybe some basic components like, we're going to use armor class, we're going to use a to hit die of D20, and we're going to use these modifiers to determine whether or not we hit the armor class or hit that difficulty check or whatever else is in there. And then some of the generic rules from spells, like all of the spells in the SRD, like if you use Magic Missile as an example, that was designed to be, you cast so many at this level, so many at this level, so many at this level, so many at this level. They do this much damage. It has this much range. It affects this many targets. It can be split between this many targets. All of that stuff is like the SRD component, which are just, it's rules, but it's not, it's not rules, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not the actual system. It's just a governing sort of, these are the aspects of this spell, the information, if you would, the meta of that spell. Um, so if you take that meta out, all of these worlds still exist independent of the systems that were being used as part of the OGL. And those systems aren't that much. It's really not that much. If you go back to, I think the argument I made in the discussion about the 25% commission or the royalty they were asking for, I said that's not how. At most, the SRD and the rules make up 10% of these other worlds that people are playing. It's not 25%. It's maybe 10%. So even if they were entitled to any sort of royalty, not no, not 25%. So one of the good things, and this is quite possibly one of the only good things I saw. Welcome to the channel, Spamfo 32. Um, the um, the idea that they got rid of the 25% royalty, they said, we got rid of that. That was their update here in the, where's it at here? It will not contain any royalty structure at all. So there's not going to be any royalties owed by anybody over anything. That is a massive walk back. You know what I mean? Like, to go from telling everyone we want our 25% cut to saying, oh no, actually, no, whatever, no. But I think, and other people have said this more eloquently than I have said it, is that walking this all back is one thing, but it's still because at the end of the day, they want you to sign that new OGL. They need you to sign the new OGL so that they can control the narrative and can control, more importantly, your products moving forward if they're produced under the OGL. Because remember, they own it. That's the distinction here between Wizards of the Coast and what Paizo and the other publishers are doing with their ORC system, which is not going to be owned by any one entity. It's going to be in a trust. That's a big, big difference. That way, no one can profit off of it. So this is all about the profit component. Because even if they've gotten rid of the 25%, there's still the language that you have to abide by and adhere to. And there's a lot in here that they've kept in here about the inclusiveness and, themes that they don't agree with. And in its essence, if you publish with us, your work will be censored based on these guidelines. And there's a great question I have from someone, and I apologize in advance because I didn't write their name down, but I had this individual who asked a really good question about on the upcoming open rules license, the ORC, will it have language in it forcing players to tiptoe around the woke agenda? Or, in essence, will it have a morality clause like the OGL? Because that's one of the things the OGL has, is it's maintaining its stance on having a morality clause in it where they want to dictate what you can and can't say in any campaigns that you write under the OGL. I don't know that answer. I don't think that Paizo and the other companies have said whether or not that's going to be something they include. Here's my gut reaction to that would be, I think that no, I don't think that they would. And here's why I think that. It's more than just one company, it's multiple companies in there. And the reason that that clause exists in the OGL is because Wizards of the Coast is trying desperately hard to cater to a specific type of audience. They keep using that inclusive language. They're targeting a specific audience with that language, and they want to make sure that they can continue to foster that audience. And so, in order to do that, they need to make sure that any books that are published within their ecosystem adhere to a minimum level of you're not allowed to talk about these 20 things. And I'm using arbitrary numbers there. That's their prerogative, but again, it is censorship. And, I'm not a big fan of that because I think that in terms of storytelling, what makes good storytelling are the ugly things in life. And if everything is a safe space, companies ultimately will be, they'll be creating stuff that's absolutely bland and boring because without conflict and without these ugly parts of stories, no one ever gets a chance to really be the hero to go up against that oppressiveness and to beat the big bad guy and so on and so forth. So I'm not saying that you should have, I don't want anybody to misquote me. I'm not saying that you should have racism and things in your game. But if it doesn't exist, there are things in the real world that have created compelling mythology over the years, and those are reasons that these mythological characters rose up and fought, because there were really tyrannical rule sets and so on and so forth. And I think that that's a part of storytelling that needs to be conserved, and you can't do that if you're censoring what can and can't be talked about in your world, in your ecosystem. So I don't have an answer to that. I don't know if Paizo will be having a morality clause in there. I think that the reason that the OGL has it in there is because they're trying to foster a certain type of storytelling and what is or isn't allowed to be said within their rule set, and that's their prerogative. But it's not something that I personally subscribe to. I think that we need the ability to write stories, and stories can have good and bad. And some of the greatest stories ever told are based around really bad things happening to people. Um, so it's interesting. Let's go through some of the chat here real quick. Even WoW has arcane missiles. This is all going to shake out, and no one owns the SRD of any of it. It's a long since passed in the community, and by extension, a million world shared languages. Yes. Wayne Lamb says, I think they may have a case for stuff like beholders and displacer beasts, etc., but not dragons or orcs. Correct. And the big thing is like orcs. We obviously have to be careful how we say halflings. We can't say hobbits because that's a trademarked word. But halflings, gnomes, fairies, brownies, dragons. These are things, minotaurs that have existed in mythology for thousands of years, and no company can ever trademark those. Dark Winter says, is there a list of what monsters that are copyrighted and what isn't? Yes, there is a list. As a matter of fact, I believe, and I could be wrong on this because I haven't looked at the player handbook in a while. If you, the easiest comparison is when you take the SRD, and I think it's either the SRD and the Dungeon Master Guide or the SRD and the Player's Handbook. If you compare those two, or the Monster Manual even, you'll see the similarities, and you'll see the ones that aren't there. The ones that aren't in the SRD are the ones that are copyrighted. So these are unique to the worlds of Forgotten Realms as an example, because Wizards of the Coast actually owns that stuff. Bubbaloni says not worth worrying about. Plan support the good and the cream rises. 4 starts may need to be called something. Yeah, I'm not sure. Dark Winter. Wayne Lamb says you should have those in the game. It can be made to get the players to experience a fight against it. Yes, absolutely, from storyline perspective. Bubbaloni says all generic. Magic missiles, arcane mystical 4-star. It's just language describing a thing that everyone uses. No, it's totally legit. And you can always change the names. This is something. I've got a video I'm going to be doing probably next week. I've been playing. It's my 3rd playthrough, but Pillars of Eternity. One of the things that Obsidian Entertainment did there was they created their entire system from scratch. So not only do they have their own world from scratch, and they have some of the generic classes like Berserker and Fighter and Ranger and Cleric, maybe. But they have some. But then they have like the Chanter and the Cipher, which are unique classes to their world. But then what they did with their magic system is not only do they have this animancy, which is a different type of magic, but their spell lists for your wizards and clerics and your druids, it's 100% original names. So like concussive missiles, and they'll have different names for the different tiers. There's some generic names in there like Fireball, of course. But for the most part, all of their spells they just took stuff from the SRD and they added a little extra flair to the name of that spell. So it was like they already had a base template to riff off of, and then they used that and went from there. And that's the beautiful thing about having the OGL out there, where so many people were able to riff off of that over the years and create so many unique original worlds that were based on, oh, well, if there's a magic missile spell, we can still use the magic missile spell. We'll just call it something different. And then we'll have all these variants of that name. So it's interesting. So going back to the storytelling component, like I said, I can't answer that question entirety. I doubt it would have a morality clause in the orc because it is not owned by a single entity trying to protect its brand. It's more about multiple companies coming together. Now, one of the areas I found really interesting is when you look at the OGL and what it is and what it has been for the last 23 years, is it was supposed to be this place that would foster that organism of tabletop. And for the most part, it did, until you had a company trying to make profit off it, saying, nah, hang on a second, we're losing all this money on streams and to TikTokers and to cosplayers and to people who might mint NFTs. Look at Critical Role. They did this thing, then they went and got a TV show with Amazon, and now Amazon's funding the third season of Vox Machina, and we're not getting any of that revenue, and blah, 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 blah. Look at these companies. Grim Hollow's doing these big multi-million-dollar Kickstarters. We need a cut of that. DM Dave's got 8,000 subscribers on his Patreon page. We need a cut of that. Like, they started looking at all of these worlds, and it's like, at what point do you not understand? You're already getting your cut in the sense that people are buying your products and your source books. Like, it's a referral system. It's like the best referral system that's ever existed because it's all free word of mouth. This is what blows my mind. It blows my fucking mind because they had the best, like, referral system, the best affiliate system ever created, and they didn't have to spend a dime of advertising on it because it was already being done for them. And they went and took that big bowl of amazing Cheerios and just said, we're going to pee all in that and ruin it. That's just so unfortunate. So I do want to talk about the ORC system a little bit more. But if you keep reading through this, the 2.0 language is a joke. Provisions that allow us to protect and cultivate the inclusive environment. We already kind of briefly touched on that. We will not include a license back provision since some people were afraid. I love how they say some people were afraid this was a means for us to steal work. No, the entire internet rose up against you and said, hell no, we're not giving you the right to take our work and use it wherever you want. No way. They said the license back language was intended to protect us and our partners from creators who incorrectly allege that we stole their work. That's not even the same thing. That is literally not even the same thing. Anyway, one of the things that the OGL has been interpreted as being under Wizards of the Coast current leadership is that it's not just about product identity for them. They're also trying to nail down these are the specific components of our product identity. And they've been very open about this in the past about how anything that looks like Dungeons and Dragons, you're ripping off our product identity. In other words, if you use a font that's similar, if you use a coloring structure that's similar, a similar layout in your interior, similar stat blocks, a similar layout for your monster manual, any of those things could be considered product identity. So, especially moving forward, anybody that's creating anything in the tabletop space has to be extremely careful about making sure that their stuff looks, sounds, and feels nothing like any of the products produced by Wizards of the Coast under their D&D, branding and everything else, because that's going to be open to interpretation and open to potential lawsuits. It's a crazy, crazy, crazy thing to think about, but that's one of the big things. So it's not just about the worlds that are being created. It's about this is our way of playing tabletop and our way of playing tabletop within our Forgotten Realms and other worlds. That's it. We're gonna make that all of that is ours, and you can only use it if you want to go by our restrictive license, which is kind of crazy. Wayne Lamb says we need the Wizard Slay. It's a +2 against its chosen enemy. Money grabbing companies. Bubbleonia says, I still maintain you need a proper noun to claim a spell as your own IP. Lysander's unerring attack is copyright. Yes, I agree. Any two generic words describing a wizard's main nuke? No, I agree. And that's why if you go look at the spell list that Pillars of Eternity has, I think it's brilliant because it's really just unique naming to rename all of the spells from the SRD and to be able to do it in a way that you don't have to create anything from scratch that way. All you literally have to do is change the name of the spells and have it work within whatever unique system you're using, whether it's D20, D6, D100, or wherever else. But I hadn't even paid attention to that the first couple of times I played the game, and then this third time, because all of this has been right in front of me, I've been going, oh, okay, I get this. I understand why this was done now. It's pretty cool. So as much as the OGL was all about trying to lock down a system, and this is something I've seen a lot of people talking about, and I think that something is being missed. And again, I'll cover this more. I've got another video I'm going to do maybe for tomorrow or Tuesday, but we're going to be diving into Paizo's president's interview with, I think it was IO9. It was an exclusive interview. I think her name is Lindsay, the girl who's been doing all the reporting on this situation since the original leaked stuff. It's a great interview, and talking about how the orc is not a rule set, and that's something that I think some people have been, at least based on the comments I've seen, there's a lot of people who mistakenly believe that the orc is also a rule set. It's a rule set and a license being created together at the same time, and that's not what it is at all. It is an open license, and it's explained better in the actual interview where they talk about how think of it more like it's a big melting pot where everyone can put all of their unique source books into the pot, which is essentially what the OGL was supposed to be about in the first place. But rather than tying it to any one rule system, which is what the OGL did, it tied it to the Dungeons and Dragons D20 system. Rather than to tie it to any one system, the orc is just about fostering this big, unique place where people can put all of their ideas in one place and have that sort of be protected under this open source. No one owns it. It's held by a trust. No entity can ever profit from it, but yet you're all sort of within this license that allows everybody's things to be easily used by other people in that space for fun. But you get to maintain all the profitability of everything with around that, which is the most important thing of all. It's kind of like, I hate to describe it this way, but it would almost be like, it's not a social media network for tabletop creators, but it is a unique space where everybody can put all their ideas in one place. And I think for me, the most important components to this are the fact that it's not going to be held by any one company. It's going to be put into a trust, and eventually they're going to look to get a nonprofit to run it. And the fact that they want this to be about what the OGL was supposed to be about. The fact that they're also focused on making sure that none of the language is revocable or able to be deauthorized in the new system that's being designed. So the other companies that are involved in this, like Cobalt Press, Chaosium, Green Ronin, Legendary Games, Rogue Genius Games. For example, Cobalt Press is developing their own rule set. They're developing their own rule set that they are going to be making open for everyone to use, while they're also participating in the development of the ORC license. So I would expect you would see them publish something coming up that's using their upcoming, I believe it's called Black Flag. It'll be their rule set combined with this open license, and then that'll get put into the pool. And then anyone who wants to go in there and likes that system can use their SRD and their rule set to then riff off of and create their own kind of like, I believe, I don't know the name of their system yet, but that Black Flag system will then be usable by other people. That's essentially what's being put forth right now. And so I don't know whether Green Ronin and these other companies are going to be developing their own rule sets or not to be used in conjunction with this open license. But it's a really interesting way to, it's basically, because they do mention it in the title, system neutral. This press release literally said system neutral. Which is why I was a little miffed on why there was confusion around the fact that it's not about the systems. And some people are like, but it's going to be a system. It's like, no, it's not going to be a system. I'm gonna look at some comments here. Bubbloni said, no, that was already read there. Avowed, can't wait. Hell yeah, I can't wait for Avowed. I've been ever since they released the teaser trailer. I thought it looked really awesome. Dark Winter says Fey dogs instead of blink dogs and Cheshire cats instead of displacer beasts. That's one way to do it. Supposedly, the displacer beast was itself lifted from a whole cloth from a comic. I have no idea. Wayne says, I always thought of it as a toolkit with the players getting to choose what they want and want to use. That's essentially what it was supposed to be. Dark Runner says they apparently weren't paying attention when Amazon's Rings of Power messed about with Tolkien fandom. Bubbleonia says, yes, all usable in all parts of the commons. Even EverQuest had eye tyrants. Correct. The Creative Commons, and I mean, it's for example, The last of Sherlock Holmes, I think, went to the open, went creative, open to all in this January, I think. It was the last, sort of the tail end of whatever was produced around Sherlock Holmes is now out there for anyone to use. It's no longer held as a, it's open for all. What I think is really interesting about that is in all of the iterations we've seen of Sherlock Holmes over the years, whether you're talking old classic films, to the current iteration that was done on the BBC with Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman. That character has always been very different, and one of the reasons that character was always very different is because in the early days of adapting Sherlock Holmes, they were only allowed to use certain stories. And as time has gone on, additional stories in Sherlock Holmes's history have become available to be used by anyone. And the way he was described in the later books is much different than the way he was described in the earlier books because the author evolved over time. And it's a very unique thing with any Creative Commons open source material is that there's always going to be iterations and it will evolve over time. I would like to think that one of the coolest things we saw from the OGL was the development of so many unique worlds. And start look at I'm not a fan of Grimdark. I'm not, but what Grim Hollow has done with their setting, if you've never read through their books, I would highly recommend getting your hands on them because they are really cool. Like the artwork is absolutely phenomenal. But I'm not a Grimdark tile. I don't like playing like, vampire monster. That's not my type of role playing. Um, but those books are incredibly well done, and none of that would exist if it weren't for what the OGL allowed people to do over the years. Because when you don't have to focus on developing the rules so much as just focus on the creative aspects of things, which are the lore and the background and everything else, you get these amazing worlds because people are able to focus on those things that are far more important than the rule sets ever are, and that's the uniqueness of these different planets. Um, there was a video I watched last night because I'm learning, even though I've been DMing for 20 plus years, like 25 years. I've always been in the D20 space, whether it was the THACO system from second edition AD&D or D20 system with fifth edition, and everything else. I've always been in that D20 space. I briefly dabbled with the D6 stuff with the Star Wars role-playing game in the late 90s, but that was a very brief period of my time, like a year-long span out of all of it. And so I'm not intimately familiar with all of these unique worlds that people have created over the years, but I am aware of all these unique worlds that were created within the OGL space. And I made an off the cuff comment during one of my videos like a week ago about how I think like 85% of all the stuff that's been produced, has OGL related to it. And that was more of me making an off the cuff remark about how 85% of the stuff that I've ever come across has been OGL related because I've been within the D20 ecosystem for so long that that's the majority of what I've seen. And there are some great things in there. You have the Middle Earth Companion. You have all of these, like all the Star Wars stuff now is within the D20 system. There are a lot of really cool rules that have come out, or a lot of cool worlds and modification of existing rules to create these alternate magic systems and everything else. I always find it interesting. I did a post the other day about I think it's probably the sticky video on my YouTube channel. Help me choose between Pathfinder and Starfinder because I want to actively engage in exploring a new rule set this year, but more importantly, a new lore set. And during the course of that video, I talk about how my priority is the lore, is the world. Like I'm in the middle of reading the core rulebook right now for Starfinder because it has all the core stuff in there. But I also picked up Paizo put out the free is it Lost Omens? It was a free PDF which has like all the lore of everything in Pathfinder, like the broad view of everything in the Pathfinder world. And so I've got those two books that I'm kind of going through right now to familiarize myself with things. And invariably, like I would say half the comments reading through it and people are like, I like this rule set. I like this rule set. I like this. I like Pathfinder 1. I like 2. I like 1.5. I like this. I like Starfinder. And very few people actually answered the question I asked, which was, can someone point me in the direction? This was literally the question of the video. Can someone point me in a direction of where I can find more about the lore of the worlds? Because at the end of the day, I'm more interested in the lore. And there were about maybe three people that answered the lore questions and sent me to like a YouTube channel and this other page and some other stuff, because so many people are fixated on the rules. And while the rules are important to any tabletop scenario, um, also um, the lore is, because without the rules, what would it be? It would just be an empty space. So you need that world setting and everything else. So for me, it's always going to be about the lore, which is why I'm really more keenly interested now in what Paizo is doing with their system neutral open RPG system, because I feel like we're going to see a new iteration of what the OGL had given us, which was all of these amazing worlds that would be thrown into this pot to be explored, and that's never a bad thing. The other thing, and I know from my perspective, it was not a bad thing that the Embracer Group bought Middle Earth Enterprises last year for that 2.3 billion or whatever it was deal, because part of that is going to be a whole swath of new Middle Earth related products coming out in the tabletop space, which I'm a big fan of, because when you get a tabletop environment, you have the ability to, you and your friends, to get together and really expand on things with power of imagination, as opposed to following a narrative that's been written by showrunners like you would get with Rings of Power or a young Aragorn show or whatever the case might be. Um, and along with that, in conjunction with that, is if you look at all the publishers who signed up with Paizo, a lot of these people are already publishing really cool worlds. Like if you go look at, Green Ronin, what do they publish? I'm not intimately familiar. I know of them. Let's look at what games do they products? Modern Age RPG, the expand. There's an Expanse RPG? No fucking way. Guys, I did not know that. Fantasy Age RPG, Titans Grove, Blue Rose, Lost Citadel, Mutants and Mastermind, Sentinels of Prime, Freeport, Dragon, and a Dragon Age RPG? Man, I am like out of touch. So this uses the Modern Age rule set. I have no clue what the Modern Age rule set is. Dragon Age. This uses the adventure game engine. So does Green Ronin publish different? As you can see, they've got these different rule sets being put into their different products. So now that we're getting this system neutral thing, you'll start to see all this stuff start being more cohesive and tied together. Guys, I did not know there was an Expanse RPG. I love the show, and I've only briefly started getting into the books. And it's on my agenda this year is to read through the entire series. I've actually got the first book on my Kindle right now. Um, I may, yeah, that's I shouldn't be looking at this while I'm live. That's dangerous. I need to. Did I accidentally close that down? I accidentally closed that down. Sorry, guys, I got sidetracked. Don't let me do that. Let's see here. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was one of the conspirators behind the Piltdown Man. Okay. Bubbleonia says, old school Conan crossovers with the Dispatch of Lovecraft have been called grimdark too. The common language makes strange bedfellows with it and grim. That's interesting. Given who inspired Gygax only goes to show they didn't do their research. I'd explore more than one. I don't have time to explore more than one, though, is the problem with Bologna. I'm very limited on my time because of everything we're doing with the homesteading. And then, I try not to promote it too much on this channel. I may be changing that now that we're getting into all this new stuff. But, obviously we have our own world back there. So I work on that. About 30% of my work week goes towards our world of Weave in the Void. The tabletop stuff has been out since last May. We just kind of stripped all the OGL stuff out of it very quickly, I might add, just to get a new PDF out there last week. So we now have a system agnostic PDF up there that's got all the lore and the settings and everything else, and the first adventure module, which is levels 1 to 4. But it still has a lot of reference to D20 stuff in there. So ultimately, over the course of the year, I got to go back into that and just make it a little more system agnostic. But I spent a lot of time working on that, and so my time is limited between that content creation here, YouTubing, and then everything we do with the homestead and the other YouTube channel. So I wish I had more time to get into more systems, but I got to pick my battles, and I've already decided I'm either going to choose Pathfinder or Starfinder to explore this year. I can only do one. I can't do both. I'm currently reading the Starfinder core rulebook first, and then if I like it enough, I'm gonna go see if I can't find a game to join somewhere because I don't want to try to read that and the Pathfinder one at the same time. I know that I like Pathfinder because I played the Owlcat games, so I know I like the setting. So right now I'm reading the core book for Starfinder to see if I like the setting. If I like the setting, then I'm gonna go try to find a game with it. But that expanse, excuse me, I don't need to know about that because I'll lose. That show is the best thing I've seen since the Battlestar Galactica reimagined show from the early 2000s. Like the Expanse blew me away, and I'd never read the books. So starting on the books, maybe next month. I'm in the middle of a reread of New Spring by Robert Jordan right now. So between that and my Mondays in Middle Earth with the Return of the King, I just don't have time. Um, Oblivious is funny. Funny pick this too because both of them set in the same universe. Both writers knew each other and used Yogg as an elder god. Similarities between themselves, explicit outline, mutual sandbox. It's a whole thing and a fun deep dive. Who was the best Sherlock Holmes actor? Asks Darkwinter. I really like Cumberbatch. I really do. My wife loves those as well. Chris loves that show. Nick Play says, will there be a censorship clause in the ORC? We covered that earlier, Nick. I don't think it will because it's not tied to any brand identity, and that's one of the reasons that Wizards of the Coast has it in there for Dungeons and Dragons because they're trying really hard to make that be their brand identity, the inclusiveness of their space. Well, Maloney says you could do what you can is that you can do a Sherlock Holmes where he teams up with Conan to fight a vengeful time. Oh. Got you. I didn't understand what you're talking about either. Nobody owns the idea of D&D as Wizards is finding out. Correct. Yeah, you could totally have Sherlock Holmes team up with Conan to fight a vengeful Time Lord because those are all entities that are in the public domain, so no one can control that. So you could totally, like, I literally sat here with Chris. I don't know, it was a couple weeks ago. We were talking about Sherlock Holmes, and I was going over all of the different ways that you could now use Sherlock Holmes now that it's in the public domain. Like you could make him a science fiction character, you could make him a fantasy character, you could literally use the same name and just change the setting and make him like imagine Babylon 5, only that's where Sherlock Holmes lived. And so you literally create Sherlock Holmes within the Babylon 5 space station scenario, and you write a book about that, about him solving crimes on Babylon 5. Not you can't use Babylon 5 because that's under copyright. That was an example I was giving. That's a bad example because it had a copyright thing. But imagine a Babylon 5 type space station. You can put Sherlock Holmes in that environment now, and it's totally legitimate because it's a public domain character, which is going to be great. I've already got some crazy ideas for some short stories I might do. We'll see. Is Darkwinter asks, is the Pathfinder Nexus a thing? So I'm just getting into Pathfinder. I do know what you're talking about because I watched a short on it and got me into reading this morning. I have it bookmarked for a future video. It appears that they have an app in development called Pathfinder Nexus. However, I think the disappointing thing about that, and I don't know if this will change or not, again, my limited understanding of things, is that it operates much in the same way like, you know, it's a companion app, but it requires you to separately purchase the products, which I don't agree with at all. Which is why I don't know enough about it to make any comments on it. As an example, I have Fantasy Grounds. I paid for a professional license with Fantasy Grounds because we do a lot of stuff with it, and we liked that system for our VTT. I purchased official Wizards of the Coast D&D products for Fantasy Grounds to easily be able to run 5e campaigns based on the OGL within Fantasy Grounds. I also have access to the rule set for first edition Pathfinder, second edition Pathfinder, so on. So there's a lot of rule sets built into Fantasy Grounds. But if you want to run any official campaigns using their built-in systems with Fantasy Grounds, you have to purchase those through them, and that's an independent purchase than what if you already own the physical books. You still have to go purchase the books for the Fantasy Grounds platform. So I essentially see that that's what's going on with Pathfinder Nexus. I could be mistaken on that. It's still also, I think it's still in beta. I don't understand it perfectly. Johnny Lee Miller, I'd forgotten about. That was just called. That was called a one name. It was a one title show. Was it just Sherlock? Wasn't it? And he was set in like New York City with Lucy Liu as his partner. I remember watching the first like 4 or 5 seasons of that. I think Chris made it like 8 or 10 episodes in before she was like, "These are all the same carbon copies of each other. They're all the same episodes. It's just stupid episodes of the week." So she didn't really enjoy that show. But I did like Johnny Lee Miller as his heroin addicted um, version of Sherlock Holmes. That was a lot of fun. Still need this Torg. Sherlock Holmes solving crimes on a submarine for 20,000 leagues out of the sea. That'd be interesting. Upper Pylon 3. There you go. 22-1B Baker, Upper Pylon 3. I'm not sure about Conan, but yeah, it's anyway, guys. Elementary. Thank you. That's what it was called. I remember it was just one word. I couldn't remember what it was called. Just remember it was one word and that was it. We're about an hour in, everybody. Does anybody have any additional questions they'd like to ask while we're sitting here talking about stuff? Otherwise, I will go ahead and start wrapping up because I got to go get breakfast cooked for Chris and I. We're having I'm making skillet, well, pan fried taters with some leftover steak and eggs. It's gonna be good. Get my cast iron skillets out. But no, I don't know if we're doing campfire today though or not. Just stay tuned to the homesteading channel because if we do a campfire cookout, we'll put a short up and make a video. But I think we're doing everything inside today. But the big thing for me as we wrap up, everybody, the thing that I'm most excited about with ORC is the fact that it is going to be a system neutral space. So it's just going to be a big open environment of people who want to all play in the same sandbox. I am not a rules person. I'm not a rules snob. I've honestly, people are allowed their opinions and they can say whatever they want. I know a lot of my videos have gotten tons of comments from people who are like, D20 sucks. I'll only ever play Castles and Crusades. D20 sucks. I'll only ever play 2D20. D20 sucks. I'll only ever play GURPS or GURDS or whatever it's called. There are a handful, and thankfully it seems to be a minority, there are a handful of people who are really uptight about their rules and what rule set is being used. Someone left a comment the other day said one of the reasons I hate Pathfinder 2.e is it's so crunchy and they don't give me enough tools to just do simple narrative. I'm like, you do understand that you can strip out the things you don't like from a rule set, and like that was always one of the clauses in the original Dungeons and Dragons books was these rules are just guidelines. Do whatever you want. Throw the rules out if you want to. It's just there as a template, a foundation layer. So I'm a big fan of having more system neutral stuff or worlds that are allowed to be system agnostic and can be used with any system. That way people can have their preferences without being snooty about it. And these worlds can be designed to be played within lots of different space or at least easily adaptable to be played in lots of other rule sets. Yeah, Bubble One says people are silly. Play what you like, but winning friends to play with never begins with XXX sucks. You're right. You're never going to find people to play with. Wayne says only rule in RPG book is have fun. Everything else is optional. I agree. Have fun. In any case, thanks for listening this morning, everybody. I may do some more tabletop chats this week. I'm not sure. I've not really done a lot of open conversations like this on my YouTube channel. For the most part, my channel has always been me uploading game videos and commentary and show reviews and pop culture and stuff with streaming games. But there's been some really good conversations that have been happening in the tabletop space, and because that's ultimately a third of what I do with my life is tabletop. Um, I'd like to continue to be a part of that conversation and continue to see where it goes, and also branch out and explore new things this year. I've been so hunkered down. We spent 7 years building an MMORPG, and then the last 2 years developing our point and click game and this tabletop game. That it's been 9 or 10 years since I've been able to really just go do somebody else's stuff because I've been so focused on building my own stuff up. But our world is pretty much done. The point and click game is almost done. The first book is almost out the door from the book series. I mean, we're already up to chapter 31 on the Patreon page. Like we've gotten the bulk of like all that done over the last. I mean, it'll be 2 years in March, and we're gonna be trying to wrap up 100% of everything by March. So the tabletop came out last May. We live streamed the campaigns for a while. We've got the book finishing up in March. My brother's finishing up the point and click. As I get all that stuff finished up, I get to have more time to explore stuff that I like for content creation here on my channel here. And I'm really hoping, I'm liking what I'm reading with Starfighter. The one thing that I will say that I'm not a huge fan of, but it's not enough to take me away from it because I want to try new things this year, is it's not specifically science fiction. It's more like science fantasy because it still has your classical like elves and dragons and stuff like that, and there's like some magic to it, even though there's technology, which is weird. I've never indulged in that before. But I'm also getting ready to do the Star Wars RPG system from West End Games with my brother and my nephew. So I feel like having a chance to explore some science fiction this year is going to be good things. But also, I've never played any Warhammer, and I know Rogue Trader is coming out later this year from Owlcat Games. At least I hope it's later this year. I can't wait to play that. Obviously, we got Baldur's Gate 3 coming in August. Can't wait to play that. So there's some really good stuff coming out. So anyway, I might do some more of these if you guys liked it, etc. Um, that's it. If you guys got more questions, feel free to ping me in Discord, send them to me. If you got articles you'd like me to talk about too, just direct message me on Discord. We have a pretty strict spam filter set up in our Discord channel because of spamming issues we've had in the past. So if you try to drop links there without having leveled up on our Discord server, they'll get nuked. So if you're new to our server, send it to me in a private DM. Otherwise, you should be able to. You can link to stuff if you've been on our server for a while and you've leveled up a bit. Anyway, links to all that stuff's down below if you want to check out our Patreon page and our Discord, etc. I got a few more videos coming out this week as I continue to analyze what's going on. We're going to be talking about the interview with Paizo's president that came out the other day, talking about that in greater detail. Also got we're going to be talking about Baldur's Gate 3 and some other stuff. So stay tuned for that. And as I continue to get deeper into Starfighter and Pathfinder. Dark Runner says, will it start to quieten down or will something else get leaked? I would assume that we're probably going to see radio silence for the next couple of weeks because whatever's going to be their next iteration, they're going to want to go through that with like it's going to be vetted to the absolute max. And it may even be that their circle of people who they trust to chime in on things might get smaller and smaller because they're trying to narrow down where the leak came from now. I would guess. Man, I would honestly, if I was Wizards of the Coast, I would go away for like 3 months and let this completely blow over. Just just let it go, completely blow over, and then make your changes in the background, and then come back around in 3 months, and then try to have the conversation again with much better language. Also, get rid of um, the condescending bullshit, because let me go pull it up real quick. This thing at the end, you're gonna hear people say that they won and we lost because making your voices heard forced us to change our plans. They're only half right. They won and so did we. You didn't win. Was they need to be willing to accept defeat. And so I think the best course of action, if I was them, if I was in charge of, like, if I was think about it this way, you know how in the current FTX scandal, there was a new CEO who was assigned to the FTX group to oversee the bankruptcy, right, and oversee all of this. The same guy who did the Enron for the Enron company when they went through the Enron scandal. The new CEO has to come in and see how screwed up everything is, and then he has to make some public statements about what they're doing to fix it. I don't think they're going to change leadership. It would be great if they did. If I was in charge of things, I would immediately be firing the person who's currently CEO of Wizards. I would bring in a new person, and I would uh, within a week or two's time, I would make a big announcement saying, "Hi guys, I'm the new CEO. We screwed up. We screwed up. We messed up. We did all of these things wrong, and it doesn't matter what our intent was. We just screwed up. So we're coming to you, hearts in hands, saying we're so sorry. You know, we screwed up. Help us make this right. How do we do that?" And then you listen. You listen to the community and you let them provide you feedback. The number one piece of feedback that we have seen: don't take away the 1.0A OGL. That's literally the only. This is what blows my fucking mind. The only thing people want, the only thing people have asked for: don't kill the OGL 1.0A. That's the only thing people have asked for. So if I was, D&D, that's, that's how I would do it if I was Wizards of the Coast. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think that they've made it apparent that they are buckled down and doubled down on this. And I don't think we're going to see anybody coming back and saying, "Oh, we're sorry, guys," because they've already made this statement. Nah, you didn't win. We won. We won. Yeah, whatever. Maybe you guys win. You can call it a win if you want, but we were the ones who won. It's the most condescending press statement I've ever seen. And they got to get rid of that. They got to get rid of that. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, everybody. If you haven't already done so, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so that you never miss an update. If you're here during premieres and live streams like this, you can support with a super chat down below. You can also join. I've got 3 different tiers of membership. Baloney is a member. You get cool little pieces of art from our tabletop book. That's what that artwork comes from. It's from the classes and races in our book. That's what members get access to. We also do some private videos here from time to time, although I'm a little bit behind because of all the stuff that's been happening. So it's been about 2 weeks since I've done one. We do live streams almost every day. I play games. I haven't done a lot of tabletop gaming on this channel. Mostly it's me playing CRPGs, RPGs, and MMORPGs. And of course, we're doing all these reviews of like Star Wars, Star Trek, other shows, books, and so on and so forth. So if you like that kind of stuff, hang out. Hopefully, we'll see you in another video. And then don't forget to check out this morning's video. I was diving into the Star Wars RPG system by West End Games and the upcoming plans for that. And then I'm going to go away from this, and I got to record Mondays in Middle Earth for tomorrow. We're up to chapter 8, I think, in Return of the King. And then look at what I'm recording for tomorrow morning, which I don't know what it is yet. I got like 3 or 4 different videos I can cover tomorrow's morning's tabletop discussion. So hopefully, if we don't see you later on, I'll see you tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock for the next premiere. Every morning at 6, I try to do one of these premieres for everybody. So we'll see you then, everybody. Have a good Sunday.